Have you ever walked into a room and immediately looked for the safest place to stand? Not because you wanted to hide, you just didn't want anyone to notice you too much. Maybe you rehearsed what you were going to say before saying it. Maybe someone asked you a simple question and somehow your mind went completely blank. Maybe you wanted to raise your hand, but then thought, what if my answer is stupid? Or you wanted to speak to someone new, but your brain suddenly gave you 20 reasons not to, and eventually, you started telling yourself a story. I'm just shy. I'm not naturally confident. Other people are better at this than me. That's just who I am. Maya believed that story for years. She thought confidence was something people were simply born with. Some people had it. Some people didn't. And unfortunately, she thought she was one of the people who didn't. Until one ordinary morning, she realized something that completely changed the way she saw herself. She didn't need to become a different person. She just needed to start giving herself evidence that she could trust herself. And she started with something so small. She almost laughed at herself for calling it confidence. Maya wasn't someone who hated people. That was the strange part. She actually loved people. She loved listening to someone's story. She loved laughing with people she trusted. She loved those conversations where you suddenly realize you've been talking for 2 hours and somehow it feels like 10 minutes, but getting there was difficult. She could think of 100 things to say. She just couldn't always convince herself to say them. At work, she'd sometimes have an idea during a meeting. A good idea. She'd think, I should say this. Then someone else would start talking, and she'd wait. Then someone else would speak, and she'd wait again. By the time there was an opening, the moment was gone. She'd go home afterward and think about it. Why didn't I say anything? And that question hurt more than the meeting itself, because every time she stayed silent, she felt like she was collecting another piece of evidence against herself. See, you can't do this. You're awkward. You're not confident. You're just not that kind of person. She didn't realize it at the time, but she was practicing something every single day. She was practicing doubting herself, and whatever we practice repeatedly starts to feel natural. One evening, Maya came home exhausted. She dropped her bag near the door, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat on the edge of her bed. She wasn't crying. Nothing dramatic had happened. It had just been one of those days. She opened her phone, scrolled for a while, watched other people talk confidently, people traveling, people starting businesses, people speaking in front of crowds, people posting their accomplishments, people who seemed completely comfortable being themselves. And without even noticing it, Maya started comparing. She makes everything look so easy. I could never do that. Look how confident she is. Then she caught herself. And for some reason, that night, she asked a different question. Not, why am I so insecure? But, what if I haven't actually given myself enough chances to become confident? She sat quietly. That question felt uncomfortable, because if it was true, then maybe she wasn't broken. Maybe she was simply inexperienced. Maybe confidence wasn't a personality trait. Maybe it was something she had never really practiced, and that thought gave her a tiny bit of hope. Not a huge transformation, not a motivational movie moment, just a tiny crack in the old story. The next morning, Maya made herself a strange little promise. She wasn't going to become confident. Not yet. She wasn't going to suddenly become outgoing. She wasn't going to force herself to walk into a room and become the loudest person there. Instead, she chose one tiny thing. When she arrived at work, there was a woman she often saw in the kitchen. They'd smiled at each other dozens of times, but they'd never really talked. Normally, Maya would make her coffee, smile politely, and leave. That morning, she stayed. She looked at the woman and said, "How's your morning going?" That's it. 5 words. Nothing impressive, nothing inspirational. The woman smiled and answered. They talked for maybe 30 seconds, and then Maya went back to her desk. That was the entire event. But when she sat down, something felt different. She had done something she normally avoided, and the world hadn't ended. Nobody laughed. Nobody judged her. Nobody told her she was awkward. She had simply tried. And for the first time, Maya started to understand something. confidence doesn't always arrive before you act. Sometimes, confidence arrives because you acted. But Maya almost made the mistake most of us make. She almost dismissed it. That evening she thought, that doesn't count. It was only a conversation. It was 30 seconds. Anyone could do that. And maybe you've done this too. You accomplished something you've been afraid to do, and instead of letting yourself feel proud, you immediately shrink it. It wasn't a big deal. I should have done more. Other people do this all the time. Maya had spent years collecting evidence that she wasn't confident. Now she was finally collecting evidence that maybe she could be. But she almost threw the evidence away. So she opened her journal and she wrote, "Today I started a conversation, even though I felt nervous." She stared at the sentence. Then underneath it, she wrote, "That counts." It was such a small sentence, but she needed to see it. Because if she kept waiting for huge victories before allowing herself to feel capable, she might never feel capable. The next day, she did it again. Not the same thing, something slightly different. She had always wanted to ask a question during meetings, so when the opportunity came, her heart started beating faster. She could feel the familiar thought arriving. Don't. Someone else will ask. What if they think it's obvious? Maya almost stayed quiet. Then she remembered yesterday, not the conversation itself, the feeling afterward. That tiny feeling of, I did something I said I couldn't do. So she took a breath and raised her hand. Her voice wasn't perfectly steady. She didn't suddenly sound like a professional speaker. She asked her question. Someone answered. The meeting continued, and that was it. But something inside her had shifted again, because she was learning something much more valuable than how to speak confidently. She was learning, I can feel nervous and still do the thing. That sentence became important to her, because before this, Maya had believed confidence meant feeling fearless. Now, she was beginning to understand that confidence could simply mean, I don't feel completely ready, but I trust myself enough to try. Something interesting happened over the next few weeks. Maya didn't become a completely different person. She still had awkward moments. She still overthought conversations sometimes. She still walked into rooms where she felt nervous. She still had days when she compared herself to everyone around her, but something had changed. She stopped using those moments as proof that she was broken. If her voice shook, she didn't think, I'm terrible at this. She thought, I'm practicing. If she made a mistake, she didn't immediately think, see? I knew I couldn't do it. She started thinking, okay, that didn't go the way I wanted. What can I try next time? And that tiny change in language changed something much deeper. She wasn't judging herself from the outside anymore. She was standing beside herself, almost like a friend. And maybe that's where confidence really begins. Not with becoming impressive, not with never feeling embarrassed, not with becoming fearless, but with learning to stay on your own side, even when you're uncomfortable. Maya started thinking about confidence like a muscle, not because she suddenly became an expert, but because the idea made sense to her. If you never use a muscle, it doesn't become stronger because you wish it would. And confidence seems strangely similar. Every small conversation was a rep. Every time she shared an opinion was a rep. Every time she tried something new was a rep. Every time she made a mistake and didn't attack herself afterward, that was a rep too. Even the silly things counted. One morning, she sang while making breakfast. She laughed halfway through because she knew she sounded terrible, but she kept singing. Another day, she went into a cafe alone and sat by the window. At first, she felt awkward. Then, she opened her book. After 10 minutes, she forgot she was supposed to feel awkward. Another day, she asked someone for help instead of pretending she understood something. Another day, she said, actually, I don't agree. And afterward, her heart was racing, but she survived that too. None of these moments looked impressive from the outside. That's the secret. Most confidence is built in moments nobody else notices. One afternoon, Maya found an old journal. She opened it casually. Then she saw a page she'd written months earlier. It said, I wish I could be like other people. She stopped. She read it again, and then another page. I hate that I overthink everything. Another. I wish I wasn't so shy. Another. I don't think I'll ever be confident. Maya sat there for a long time because she remembered exactly how she had felt when she'd written those words. She had genuinely believed that version of herself was permanent, and yet there she was, still imperfect, still sometimes nervous, still human, but different. She had evidence now, evidence that people could change, evidence that she could do difficult things, evidence that confidence didn't have to appear all at once. She hadn't become a new person, she had simply stopped abandoning the old one, and, slowly, she had taught herself that she was worth trusting. Maybe you're listening to this and thinking, okay, but what if I don't feel confident at all? Then please don't start by trying to become confident. Start by becoming willing to try one tiny thing. That's enough. Maybe tomorrow you speak first instead of waiting. Maybe you share an opinion you've been keeping to yourself. Maybe you ask a question. Maybe you walk into a place alone. Maybe you finally try something you've been saying, I'm not good at that. Or maybe your first rep is even smaller. Maybe you look at yourself in the mirror and stop saying something cruel. Maybe you catch yourself comparing and choose not to continue the comparison. Maybe you make your bed, finish the task you've been avoiding, take the walk you promised yourself you'd take, or finally open the notebook you've been afraid to start. It doesn't have to look like confidence. It just needs to be an action that says, I am willing to show up for myself. And there's one practice I want you to try tonight. Not because it will magically transform you overnight, but because I want you to start noticing something your anxious mind may have been ignoring. Before you go to sleep, take a piece of paper or open your journal and write 3 things you did well today. They can be tiny. Please let them be tiny. Maybe you answered a message you've been avoiding. Maybe you spoke up. Maybe you took care of yourself when you were exhausted. Maybe you finished something. Maybe you made a difficult decision. Maybe you stayed calm in a conversation. Maybe you tried again after making a mistake. And if you're thinking, I didn't do anything well today, that's okay. Look closer. Maybe you got out of bed when you didn't feel like it. Maybe you kept going. Maybe you were kind to someone. Maybe you were kind to yourself for 5 minutes. Write it down. Then underneath your 3 wins, write one sentence. This is evidence that I am becoming someone I can trust. Don't force yourself to believe it. Just read it. Let the idea sit there. Because confidence isn't built by convincing yourself you're amazing. Sometimes it's built by quietly collecting evidence, one day at a time. And here's something I wish someone had told Maya earlier. Some days, you will have a bad rep. You'll say something awkward. You'll avoid the thing you wanted to do. You'll compare yourself again. You'll freeze. You'll overthink. You'll go home and replay the conversation. And you'll think, I lost all my progress. You didn't. One uncomfortable day doesn't erase all the days before it. If you went to the gym once and then had a week where you couldn't exercise, you wouldn't suddenly lose every bit of strength you'd built. Confidence is similar. You don't have to perform perfectly to keep becoming stronger. You just have to return. That's the part nobody talks about enough. Confidence isn't only built through brave moments. It's also built through coming back after the moments that didn't go well. You try again. You speak again. You begin again. And every time you return to yourself instead of giving up on yourself, you're doing another rep. Months later, Maya found herself in another room, another meeting, another opportunity to speak. Her heart still beat faster. For a second, she recognized the old feeling, that familiar voice, stay quiet. But this time, she smiled. Not because she wasn't nervous, because she knew something now. She didn't need the nervousness to disappear before she could move. She could carry it with her, so she spoke. Her voice wasn't perfect. Her words weren't perfect, but she finished. And when she sat back down, she realized something. She had spent so much of her life waiting to feel confident that she'd never realized confidence might be something you build while you're afraid. That was the real transformation. Not becoming fearless, not becoming the most outgoing person in the room, not becoming someone else, just becoming a woman who could look at herself and say, I don't know exactly how this will go, but I trust myself enough to try. And maybe this is the part I want you to remember most. Your confidence doesn't have to look like someone else's. Maybe you're never going to be the loudest person in the room, Maybe you don't want to be. Maybe your confidence looks quiet. Maybe it looks like saying no without explaining yourself for 20 minutes. Maybe it looks like walking away from something that isn't good for you. Maybe it looks like trying again. Maybe it looks like asking for help. Maybe it looks like sharing your opinion. Maybe it looks like wearing something you love without wondering whether everyone approves. Maybe it looks like opening that project you've been afraid to start. Maybe it looks like sitting alone without feeling like something is wrong with you. Confidence is personal, but the foundation is often the same. You keep small promises to yourself. You take small risks. You survive small moments of discomfort. You notice your progress, and slowly, your mind begins to believe, maybe I can trust me. So if you've been waiting to become confident before you start, maybe you don't have to wait anymore. Choose one tiny rep, not 10, not 20, just one. One conversation, one question, one decision, one small boundary, one thing you've been avoiding, one promise you keep to yourself. Then, tonight, write it down, and tomorrow, do another. You might not notice the change at first. That's okay. Most growth is quiet while it's happening. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly become a completely different person. You just look back one day and realize you don't talk to yourself the way you used to. You don't run from every uncomfortable moment. You don't need everyone to approve of you. You don't immediately believe every negative thought. You trust your decisions a little more. You try things you once thought were impossible, and you realize the confident version of you wasn't hiding somewhere waiting to appear. You were building her, rep by rep, choice by choice, day by day. So start small. Let the first rep be almost embarrassingly small, because small doesn't mean insignificant. Small is how you begin. And if today was difficult, you can begin tomorrow. And if tomorrow is difficult too, you can begin the day after that. You haven't missed your chance to become confident. You're still here, you're still learning, and you can still build yourself brick by brick. And if anxiety is usually the thing that stops you before you even take that first step, start there. Before your morning gets busy, give yourself 3 quiet minutes. Breathe, slow down, let some of that mental noise settle. I've created a free 3-minute anxiety reset for exactly those moments when your thoughts feel louder than you want them to. You can use it before journaling, before trying something uncomfortable, or simply when you need a few minutes to come back to yourself. I'll leave it linked below. And if you're trying to build a calmer mind, stronger confidence, and a kinder relationship with yourself, you're welcome here. You don't have to become a completely different person. You just have to keep showing up for the person you're becoming. I'll see you in the next one.